All right, Tim, take it away. Files and folders.
All right, so this is the libraries class on files and folders. This is a relatively short class, so if anyone has any questions, definitely feel free to pipe up whenever we stop for questions or just type it in the chat, whichever floats your boat. You can always hit the raise hand icon as well. While I'm currently on a Windows computer, a lot of what we cover will be incredibly similar for if you're using a Mac computer or a Chromebook or something of that nature. All right, the main difference between these systems is how to right-click. In general, if you're wanting to do something or feel like you should have more options, try right-clicking on something. And the right-click options are listed on the screen now. With Windows, you can generally, as the name suggests, use the right mouse button. If you are on a laptop, this could also mean that you're using the bottom right of the trackpad. Or if you have it set up, you can use 2 fingers and tap the trackpad. On an Apple computer, once again, you use the right mouse button, or you can use 2 fingers and tap the trackpad, or you can hold Control and then click on something. In Chrome, right mouse button, 2 fingers, hold Alt, and then click on something. By right-clicking, what you'll do is you will open up a contextual menu, otherwise known as an accordion menu, that gives you pretty much every option you're able to do for a given item. So whatever you click on, in this case, it'll be a file or a folder. Also, we do kind of a brief overview in this class of data storage. So generally, whenever you store data, it will be on your computer. One thing you can do, though, is if you have something like OneDrive, which is from Microsoft, Google Drive, which is through Google, or Dropbox, which is through Dropbox. Also, if you're on a Mac, you can also use iCloud, which is Apple's built-in version of this. All of these will give you free a certain amount of storage. And in general, the free storage is more than enough if all you're looking to save are documents such as Word documents or Excel documents. Whenever you get into pictures and videos, that's when you're going to start to use up a lot of space. So I like to keep this kind of window open just to let you know about the pricing and basically to also show you that the pricing is very similar for all of them. So essentially you get 5 or 15 or 2 gigabytes free. That is generally enough for documents, as I said, just like Word or Excel documents. Whenever you start using pictures or something like that, that's when you would need to pay for storage. Most of them will have a 100 gigabyte option for about $2 a month. This is enough for casual pictures, kind of sharing PDFs of recipes, that sort of thing. And then 1 terabyte, which ranges from $6.99 a month to 2 terabytes for $10 a month, is where you get kind of into, you take videos or you take a lot of pictures if you're on vacation, or you just have a lot of pictures that you want to make sure are safe. The other reason why cloud storage makes sense for a lot of people is if your computer breaks, or if by some other means you no longer have access to your computer, all of the information that was stored in the cloud folder, all of that will be saved so you don't lose anything. The reason I personally use it is I have multiple computers. And what's nice about cloud storage is if you have it installed on multiple computers, if you put a file or a folder or a picture or whatever in a folder, in the cloud storage folder, it will then go to all of your other devices, so you'll have access to it. So I like it because then you don't have one copy on your laptop and one copy on your desktop. That are separate copies, you just have one that is in both locations. All right, as you can see, this was an incredibly short slide portion because there's honestly not an incredible amount to go over in slides. So we're just going to go ahead and open up a folder. So you open up a folder on Windows by going to the bottom left and clicking on what looks like the manila envelope. Once you're there, this will open. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger and close this just so it's a little bit easier to see. So this is a folder. You can see on the left-hand side, since this is a Windows computer, you also have Quick Access, Dropbox, OneDrive, this computer or this PC. So it can sometimes be confusing where you want to store something. So in my case, since I have OneDrive signed in, on the left-hand side, I will click on OneDrive, and then I will be taken to my OneDrive folder. Because this is where I want to store things, I will just remember to anytime I need to save anything, I will always go to this folder. That way I don't forget where anything is. You can often run into problems whenever you try and, or I will oftentimes run into problems whenever I try and be too smart for myself. So I will try and store documents that are, X related in a certain folder, documents that are Y related in a certain folder. And then, of course, in a month or two, whenever I need to access those, I have no idea what I was thinking. I forget where they are. So it's easier if you just keep everything in one location, in my opinion.
So you don't separate in your documents. There's no separation of lower level folders.
Well, I do separate it, but I separate it from a central location.
Okay.
So for example, you have a pictures folder. I don't care about that. I just want everything to be in my OneDrive personal documents folder, because that way I don't lose it. I know exactly where everything is. All right, plus OneDrive has a pictures folder. All right, so as you can see, I have very large icons. In order to change the view, what you will do is once you're in a folder, you will go up to the View tab, and then you have all of these options. I don't have enough folders in here, so I will just make some more. Just for fun. So if I go to View, I have extra large icons. This makes it incredibly easy to see. Small icons makes it, you can fit a lot more information in the window. Tiles, this is kind of like a medium thing. Large icons, list, content, medium icons, details. So in general, if you want to be able to see a lot of information, I really recommend the details option. The reason why I like the details option is you see the name of the folder, you see the date modified, and you see the type. And you can sort by any of these. So the reason why this is really nice is, for me, the date modified. If you're like me, generally, whenever you want to access something, you roughly know if it was the most recent thing or if it was the oldest thing. But if you're just looking for the most recent thing that you've changed, then you can sort by date modified, and you can sort by clicking on the, is that a column? I think it's a column. You can search by, or sort by this column, and you just click date modified, and it will put it from A to Z or 1 to infinity, and then click it again, it'll go from Z to A or infinity to 1. Same with name. You can see attachments is at the top because it begins with an A. I click it again, all of a sudden attachments is at the bottom because it begins with an A. So just to make this easier to see, I'm just going to go back to extra large icons. Now, are there any questions on like how to open up a folder or get to where you can see folders?
I don't know how to get to see folders.
So we have, what kind of computer do you have?
I have a Lenovo.
A Lenovo computer, she can't see her folders.
I can see some folders. But I don't think I'm at the right place.
I'll go over and take a look, Tim. Is there anybody online who has a question for Tim?
I think we have a question here at Rivermead.
I just want to
Okay,
this PC.
Yeah. Yeah.
The documents.
How-
All of those, yeah.
Thank you.
Good. We're having trouble hearing you from Rivermead.
Okay,
You want to try again? Maybe put the question in chat.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Putcher has a question about file folders.
Yes, would you show us how to open the folder?
how to open a folder?
Yes.
Okay, so whenever you found the folder that you want to interact with and have it open on your screen, in order to open a folder, you will just double click. So once you double click, it will then open the folder. This folder doesn't have anything in it, so I will right click, which brings up this contextual menu, which has all sorts of different options. The only one I currently care about is new. I will do new text document, just to have something in the folder. Now, let's say that I went into the wrong folder, right? Up at the top here, we can see the location or exactly where I am. It may be difficult for you to see, but on the left-hand side, I see, actually, if I just do this, it might be easier. If I'll actually make that even bigger. Font. All right, so if I click on the top document up, or the top navigation bar up here, what it will tell me is where all of my items are located. So the C drive is my computer. Your computer will always have the C drive if you're on Windows. It will then say it's in the users folder. This is the name of my user. And then it says I'm in OneDrive and then documents. So from here, I can see that I just need to go back one to get to OneDrive. So I can do this in one of two ways. The first way is in the top left, there is a back button. This will return you to the folder that you were previously in. The other way is to click up and hover over these options. So you can see I can hover over OneDrive Personal and I can hover over Documents. These are the folders that are before this folder. So if I click on Documents, if I click on Documents, that's the folder I'm currently on. If I click on OneDrive Personal, it will take me back to the main folder. So same thing, if I open up the Pictures folder, I can then see at the top that I am in the Pictures folder because I'm in the C drive, Users, My User, OneDrive, Pictures. So I can see that I am now in the Pictures folder by looking up here. If I'm in the correct folder, now I can interact with it. If I want to go back, once again, I can hit the back button, which is the left arrow, or I can click on OneDrive Personal and go back to the previous folder. This is very useful if you have folders within folders, because then you can just click up at the top and see exactly where you are. This will also require you to name your folders properly or in a manner that is understandable to you at a later point in time. This is where I often get too clever and confuse myself later on. One of the things I like to do is I like to, and I will change the view again, just to make it larger. One of the things I like to do is name items, name folders for what's going to be in them. So for example, this is around tax time, which I know is about 80% of the United States' favorite holiday. So I will right click in order to make a new folder. Right click. I will go down to new and then folder. This will create a new folder within the folder I'm currently in. Now it will automatically give me the option to name the folder. So what I like to do is I like to start folders, or wherever I can, I like to start things with the year. This way it's very easy for me to sort and see if something's old or if something's new. So in this case, I will put 20, depends how you like to label things. I will put this as 2022 taxes. So I know this is going to be all my information for my 2022 taxes, which is what I'm currently doing today. So then I can open it and I'll just put some text documents in it. Then I will click on it on one of the documents I've created. Let's go back to extra large icons. If I click on a document in order to select it, and then I wait a second, and then I click on it again, it will give me the option to edit the name. This will work for both files and folders. So I will name this file 2022 work W4. I will then do the same thing to the next document. I will click on it, and then I will click again, and I will do 2022 investments. Now, if you are like me and you just want to right-click the world, an easy way to rename documents or folders is to just right-click on them. Once I have right-clicked on it, I can now use this contextual menu, this very big menu, to find the rename function. So if I look near the top, I don't see anything that says rename, don't see anything that says rename. Near the bottom, I see rename. So if I click on this, it will automatically take me to a point where I can now type in the name of the document. So 2022 bad investments. So now I have 3 documents that are in my 2022 taxes folder. So if I want to go back to my documents folder outside of the taxes folder, I can either hit the back button, or I can go up to the navigation bar and click on documents, and now I am back in that folder. Let's say that I realized that this is a very important folder and I don't want to have to go into a folder in order to access it. What you can do is you can right-click on the folder. I can then go to cut.
Recording in progress.
I can go to cut, which will cut the folder out of my documents folder, and then I can move it to wherever I want. So I will hit cut. I will then use the top navigation bar to go back to the base OneDrive folder. I will then right-click in this folder at an empty space, right-click, and I will go to paste. As you can see, it has now pasted my 2022 taxes folder in here. Everything that was in that folder is now also in here. Are there any questions? Are there any questions on like how to cut, or does anyone want me to explain what the difference is between like copy and paste? Anything like that?
Is it the same steps for an apple?
Yes, same steps.
Okay.
As long as you can right click, it is the exact same step.
Okay. And yes, I'd like to know the difference between copy and paste. Your last
So-
question, I'm interested in that.
Yep. So if you were to copy something, it will take the item that you're trying to copy and it will put it in a new location, but it will keep both items. So in this case, I would now have 2 folders for my 2022 taxes. So it would be in 2 separate locations. If I cut, it will take it from the first location and move it to the second location. So I only have one version of it. So sometimes you'll want to, for example, copy something to a thumb drive, so a USB stick. That's when you would use copy. If you want to move something so it's only in one location, then you would use the cut option. The reason why you want to differentiate these 2 things is because if you just copy everything, then you will run into the issue of you will have different versions of the same information, but you're never really sure which is the newest. And you'll end up accidentally, working in the first document one day and the second document another day. And then you'll never actually finish the document because you'll kind of miss what changes you've made to it. So if you want to move something, you use cut. If you want to copy something, you will use the copy option.
Can you show them how to search for a file using the search bar?
Sure. So if you have pretty good naming conventions or you roughly know what's in it, what you can do is go to the base folder, so OneDrive, and then you go to the top right, which is the search OneDrive. I believe the Apple search is maybe in a different location,
I think
but
it's above it, if I
yeah,
remember.
but you should be able to find it. It'll have the little magnifying glass icon on it. So I will click in here and I want to search for my 2022 taxes. So I'm just going to type in 2022, hit return, and it will now go and search everything in this folder and all the subsequent folders for that name, for that text string I just did. So I can see that I have a folder because I can see the icon called 2022 taxes. And I can also see I have a file called 2022 investments, 2022 work W4, 2022 bad investments. Now, if I look to the right, I can see the location of all these files. So I can see that this folder is in users, my name, OneDrive. I can see that this document is, or this file is in C, users, my name, OneDrive, and the folder name. Now, if I click on this option and double click, it will now open it. But if I want to go to where it's located, Mary, do you know what I do if I want to go to where it's located?
I would right click it.
Yep, the answer is always right click. So we will right click it and we will go to open file location. It's on the bottom. So if you want to search for something, but you don't really know where it is, but you want to go to the folder that contains it, you will then right click on it, go to open file location. Once I hit go open file location, the document that I clicked on will be selected and I will now be in that folder that contains that document or file.
Question, in the beginning, when you had a folder to put stuff in, you're talking about changes right now in OneDrive. Do you have to make your changes in the cloud one first, or can you do it on the computer?
So with cloud storage, one of the ways, or the easiest way I know to think of it, as it is just a folder on your computer. The only differentiating factor is that folder happens to be associated with cloud storage. So all of this is kind of cloud storage provider or computer agnostic, because you just have to treat it like you would any folder. It just so happens anything that's in this folder is also saved into the cloud.
So it doesn't matter which one you click on to make changes.
Correct. Just pick basically a location that you feel comfortable with, and then stick with that location.
Thank you.
So if I go back to OneDrive Personal and I go back there by going to the top menu bar or the top location bar and clicking on the folder icon, I will now go back into the main menu. So how do I select individual folders or files? Well, let's say that I want to move every single folder that is a copy. So that just has copy in the title. The easiest way to do this on Windows is to hold Control and just start clicking. I have selected the copy. I hold Control. I click on the next one. I click on the next one. Click, 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 click. And you can see that all of these are being selected all at once. The next thing I can do is I can click on the start. So I know new folder -copy. And I know everything in between it is something I want to move or copy or cut. I can then hit Shift and click, and everything in between will be selected at the same time. So now what I would do if I wanted to move it is I would right click and go to cut, and then I would go to the location and move it. Now, another thing some of you may be used to are clicking on it and dragging. So you can now, whatever is selected, you can click on it and you can drag it to where you want to go. The reason why I personally would rather right click and go to cut, go to the location and paste is because if you are clicking and dragging, let's say I want to move all of these selected folders to 2022 taxes. I will click and drag, and I accidentally let go of my mouse. I have no idea where they went, right? They just disappeared into not the correct folder. That's why I like clicking and dragging. So if this happens to you, you don't necessarily need to find out what just happened. All you need to do is hit undo. Something weird happened, undo. You can undo on a Windows computer by pressing Control-Z. So once again, I copied all these files. I'll click on the end one, or all these folders. I will hold Shift. I will click on the first one. I will move it accidentally to the wrong folder. Whoops, I have no idea where they went. Now I want to undo. So you can either go to Control-Z. Actually, let's see if it's in here. Yep, you can either do Control-Z, which is the shortcut, or, Mary, what's my favorite thing again?
Right clicking, Tim.
Or you can right click. So I will just right click, go to Undo Move, click on it, and it will bring everything back to where it was.
I have to
So-
say Control-Z is my favorite move on a
Yes.
computer.
It reminds me of those kids in school who used pens because they were like, I never make a mistake, and I'm over here with a pencil and an eraser that's half gone. All right, so now I'm gonna move it like I normally do, which is right click. I will go to cut. I will select cut. You can kind of see, if you were paying attention, that the folder icons, or the icons of what I've selected, kind of went a little bit transparent or not as vibrant. They're kind of, muted. I will now double click on where I want to go, which is my 2022 taxes folder. I will now right click and I will hit paste. Click. Now everything is moved to the correct folder, and I had no chance to mess it up by accidentally letting go of my mouse at the wrong time. Now, if I want to go back to the main folder, I will go up to the top and click on the folder I want to go to, which is the OneDrive personal main page. And now I'm back to where I started, having moved all of those files. So let's go into pictures. I'm just going to double click to go into it. I will now go into funny copy 10 because that's my favorite one. And I have now, I will actually make this a little bit bigger, extra large icons. I will now want to open a file or folder. So this is a file. So I'm just going to double click it. And it will now open. It's now open. I can view the file. I can do whatever I want to it. I hit the X in the top right. File goes away. It's still in here, still in the folder. Plus, I really like the coffee joke. All right. Are there any questions on like cutting or copying, moving, that sort of thing?
Mine's not a question, but a comment on Apple. If you don't do your undo, like as your next step, and let's say you get distracted, whatever, and you do something else, and then you go back to do that, it's gone. That's a word of caution. In other words,
Yeah.
what you had intended to move or undo and replace with what you had before is no longer available.
Yep,
Yeah.
there's a limited amount of like undo functionality, especially if you catch it late. So it's
Right.
definitely like a first thing to do.
So Tim, this is sort of above and beyond today, but can you just sort of talk to people about how they might put one of these pictures in a email or attach a file to an email? I don't know if that's
Sure.
possible.
Yeah. So the main way I like to do this is I like to go to my mail client, right?
Mhm.
So let's say I want to put this picture, which is sloth life, nap all day, sleep all night, party never. It's my spirit animal. So I want to take this and add it to an email. So I will open up my web browser I'm currently using for this. You will now get to see my wonderful spam email account. And I'm going to go to the top left and hit compose. I'll just send it to Mary. Remember that if you have any issues or questions that you remember after the class, send it to Mary and she will pass it on to me. Sloth life. And I will type, here is a picture. All right, but I haven't attached something yet. So let's hit the attach file button, which is the little paperclip icon. Kids these days have no idea what paperclips are. And what's kind of cool is it will open up with the last folder that I have used. Now, this is important for two reasons. One, if you save a document in a certain folder, the next time you save a document that is new, it will then try to save it in the same folder as the previous document. This is nice because if you save documents again and again and again, as long as you pick the correct folder to save it in, you won't really have any issues with it saving to a random location. It's also nice because it makes it easy to attach things to something like an email. So I will click on the sloth life image. I will then hit open. And what that will do is it will then load the image into the email. Now, there is another way to do this. I don't like this way, but I'm still going to show you. And I don't like this way because it is drag and drop. So what I can do is I can click. Let me just resize this. I can click on the image and drag it. I hate dragging, but we're just going to drag it to the email. You see how it kind of says drop files here, like a big box. I'm just dragging it to the body of the message, release, and the image has been added to the email. Now you may also realize that, well, the image that I just dragged and dropped is showing, whereas the email or the image that I attached is just down here as an attachment. Did anyone have that question? I had that question. Mary probably has that question. Anyway, so if I drag and drop, it puts it in line, which means it is now a part of the email. If I attach it, it is considered an attachment, which the person can then click on to open and view. So, which should you use? Generally, it's polite and just more people do it this way. It's generally better to set it as an attachment because it doesn't force the person to immediately load it. It's becoming less and less of an issue, but if you remember way back in the day when I first got a cell phone, there weren't smartphones, so you couldn't do this. Never mind. If you remember, like you know, a couple of years ago, whenever people would have like data limits on their phones, on their cell phones, if you put an image like this, as soon as they opened that email, it would load the image, which would take way more data than having it as an attachment. These days, if you want someone to, you know, immediately see an image, you can drag and drop, but generally you will want to attach it. Then if I want to send it, I will just hit send. It will be sent, and Mary will get a 2-for-1 special on 2 funny images.
Thank you, Tim.
No problem. All right. Next fun thing. So do I have, no, not that many. All right, we're just gonna copy and paste these a little bit. I'm just using keyboard shortcuts because I like them. All right, so now I have a whole bunch of files in this folder. Good, we agree. All right, I have a whole bunch of files in this folder, and I just forgot what I was gonna do. Oh yeah, and I want to see more of them. So this window, I'll just minimize this. This window can be bigger. How can I change the size of my folder? Well, I can go to a corner. I can go to the top, left, bottom, or right, and wait for the cursor to change its shape. So I'm going to move my cursor to the top of this folder. And if you pay very close attention, right now it's a white triangle. It turns into a double white triangle with 2 triangle parts, or 2 arrows. If I then click on my folder, you can see I can drag it up and down and make it bigger or smaller. Now, the cool thing about this is if you were to close, I'm not going to, but if you were to close this folder, the next time you open it up, it will be at the same size that it is now. So Windows and Mac will remember the size you have left a folder. Now, you may say, Tim, I just want to make it as big as possible, and just clicking and dragging all these sides and corners and stuff will take too long. How do I just make it big and take up the whole screen? You're in luck. Billy Mays here. If you click and drag the top part of it, so where there is nothing, so you see there's no options, there's no files, there's no anything, there's this just big white expanse. If we click on it, we can now move the folder around, right? And now if I like to say slam, if we slam it to the top, did anyone see like the little ripple effect that happens? It might be hard to see, but if you slam your file or folder or your folder to the top, a ripple effect happens. If you then release it, it will make it full screen. The other option you can do is on the right-hand side, top right, there is a restore down option, which will make it the original size. And there is a, let's make sure I get the right terminology. There's a maximize option. And if I click on that, it will then make it full screen. So I can just go to the top right and keep making it bigger and smaller.
As long as you're into slamming things, Tim, can you show them how to have two folders open on the screen side by side by slamming one to one side and one to the other?
Sure thing. So it's a good next step. Right before that, how do you open a folder without losing access to the current folder? So I want both folders open at once. Mary, do you have any clue?
Gosh, do you right click, Tim?
That's right, Mary. Right again. So what I will do is I want to open up this folder. I will right click on it and go to Open in New Window. This will open this folder in a separate window. So now I have both of them open. Now I have both of them open, but I want them to be the same size. I want to see the folders at the same time. How do I do this? Well, what I do is I will click in the top, the great white expanse that allows me to move it, and I will move it over. Whoops. I accidentally did a shortcut. I will move it over to the right side of the screen until it hits that little point. And you can kind of see there's now a line in the center of my screen, kind of like a shadow. If I release, it will move everything into the right-hand side. So this folder is now taking up my entire right-hand side. If I then click on another folder on the left-hand side, it will then make it the same size. So now I have both of these open side by side, both taking up equal amounts of space. Now I can see that the folder on the right-hand side has way more stuff in it. So what I can do is I can move my mouse over the center line between the two folders, and you can kind of see, if you squint really hard, I have really bad eyesight, that the middle has now become gray. And now I have a two-pronged pointer. If I click on that, I can now move stuff to the left and right, and it will move both folders. Once I have it to the size I desire, I release, and now the left and the right folders are different sizes.
Right. It's always very helpful, actually, to be able to do that. So does anybody have any questions for Tim?
I have one more.
Great.
When you are sent a file and you're asked to download it, or you're not given the choice, it automatically downloads. How do you kind of stop it or whatever you have to do so that you can put it in the right folder?
So I think if I heard the question correctly, it was basically whenever you download something, where do you know where it ended up?
Yes.
Okay.
Or do you have to told to put it where you want?
So I'm not going to talk about like changing defaults just because that starts to get confusing. So by default, whenever you download something, you will oftentimes have the ability to choose where to put it. If you don't get that option, it will by default go to your downloads folder. Let me make sure I don't have anything sensitive in my downloads folder. I have tax documents. I'll just move those real quick. Doop to doop. All right. So open file. I will now go to the left-hand side. It may be difficult to see, but there is an option for downloads. I will click on that, and now I can see my downloads folder. Anything I download will by default go here. So if I downloaded, for example, a new thing, it is now in my downloads folder. This new thing, which also happens to look remarkably like a folder. Now that it has been downloaded, I want to move it to the correct location. So Mary, how would I move it?
Well, you wouldn't drag and drop it because you don't like that. So I guess you'd have to right click it.
There we go. All right, so I will right click it and I will go to cut. And now the next step is to find where I want to put it, right? So once again, I will turn my trusty eyes to the left-hand side of my screen. And remember that in this instance, I want to put everything in OneDrive. I want to put everything in the OneDrive folder. So I will click on the OneDrive folder on the left-hand side, click. Now I'm in my OneDrive folder, and it turns out this is very important to taxes because taxes seems to be the folder that I have the most stuff in. I will I will double click into taxes, and now I will find an open space, right click, and go to paste. Now I have the new thing in my 2022 taxes folder in OneDrive. And remember that if you have multiple files that were downloaded, you can, if you're on a Windows computer, you can select them individually by holding Control, or you can select a whole bunch of them by hitting Shift, by holding Shift. Now, what happens, or what do you do if you want to select everything, all the folders, but there's one in the middle that you don't want to select, you don't want to have selected, right? So I find it a lot easier to hold Shift, click, all of these are selected, but I don't want this one to be included, this folder, for a very arbitrary reason. I will now hit Control and select, and it will now deselect it. So anything that's selected, if I hold Control, it will deselect it. And then if I'm holding Control and select it again, it will now be selected. Are there any questions on pretty much anything? We're heading to the 1 hour mark, so we have about 9 minutes for those of you that are on a timer, but I'm going to answer questions for as long as people want to ask them. So any questions, and we can go from there.
So we don't have any questions in the classroom, but are there any questions on Zoom? Anybody got any last minute questions for Tim?
Is there any value in creating several folders and naming them as potential places that you would want? Like you can have a folder of taxes, a folder of medical bills, places that you might automatically use, or do you just make a new folder each time you want to do a different topic?
So I will generally make the folders that I know I'm going to use. I'll just make them ahead of time. But there's a limit to that. So as I said before, sometimes I'll be too smart for myself and I will make folders that I think will be useful and I end up not using them, and then they're just confusing. So, you don't want to be like super granular. So if I, for example, have an eye doctor's appointment and I have the personal care physician appointment and the dentist and then I go to a heart appointment, and then XYZ, you know, it may be easier for me to find those in the future if I just have a folder for medical stuff versus a folder for my primary care physician, a folder for my dentist, a folder for my eyeglasses, all of that. It's basically dealer's choice. It's however you want to do it. For me personally, I find it easier to limit the amount of folders and utilize the search function or the ability to sort by date to find items. Because if I add too many folders, then it just gets confusing for me.
So Tim, one question for those of us who have put things on a cloud storage and on the desktop and in documents on our computer. What would be this, what would you recommend as far as the way to try to clean that up so that it becomes a little bit more usable?
Well, Mary, it's funny you should ask that. We actually have a class specifically on cloud storage. I don't actually know where it is, when it is, but it goes over kind of best practices for cloud storage. But in general, what I recommend is you pick a folder on the computer. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cloud storage folder, but just put everything in that folder. So if you like saving things to your desktop, especially if you use a Mac, you can always have that folder be on the desktop and you put everything in there. If you're a Windows user and you want to use the desktop, that's fine too. If you want to use a folder that is associated with a cloud service, you just copy or you just cut and paste everything into that folder. So it's more important just to pick a folder and then cut everything and copy it into that folder is generally what I would recommend. Also, occasionally, I get the question of, you know, which cloud service or cloud storage do I recommend? And the answer is essentially all of them. They're all roughly the same price. They all are roughly as good as one another. The main difference, in my opinion, or the main two like ones to look at would be OneDrive and Google Drive. And that is purely because if you have a Gmail account, then Google Drive makes a lot of sense because it integrates very well with that. And if you want to use Microsoft applications like Word or Excel or PowerPoint, then it makes sense to use OneDrive because it integrates very well with that. The other benefit for OneDrive is if you get the 1 terabyte plan, which is the $6.99 a month, with that, you will also gain the Microsoft applications of Word and Excel and PowerPoint. So if you're already wanting to buy the Microsoft stuff, then you're already getting OneDrive. So you might as well use that.
That I did not know. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Also, if you're in a family, all of these options allow you to, OneDrive has a specific family plan, but it allows you to share your storage between different people. But that's more covered in the specific cloud storage thing. But just to let you know that if you and your significant other or a child or something like that, you don't have to buy one of these for everybody. You can kind of buy one and then share it with some limitations, but you don't have to buy it for everyone in your family.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, either email me or you can drop in tomorrow. Tim is at Tech Drop-In from 12 to 1.
Yep.
And we will see you next month. I'm going to stop the recording.